Good morning. Welcome to Ostend. Welcome to the first session of the International Artemia and Aquaculture Consortium, preceding the Larvae Conference starting later this afternoon. We have a quite heavy program, so I want to start on time and see that we can keep the schedule. Thank you very much. So we have 2, 4, 6, 7 speakers before the coffee break. I will give a brief introduction on where are we coming from and where are we heading for. So I don't have to tell this audience the importance of Artemia in feeding the babies of fish and shellfish. I'd like to go back in history and see that back in the 1960s, before hatchery aquaculture, first in Japan and later in the rest of the world, took off, the consumption of Artemia cysts was small, maybe 100 kilos, because it was mainly used in ornamental fish industry. A crucial year in the history of Artemia, in the history, I dare to say also, of hatchery aquaculture, was the first FAO technical conference in Kyoto, 1976, where the chairperson was right in saying that it was not a future for Artemia in aquaculture if you have to rely on just sources in the United States, and that you needed what they were calling at that time hard currency to feed the babies of the fish or the shrimp that you want to grow in, say, Philippines or Vietnam. We had theoretical knowledge, but not yet much practical experience, and we're coming up with a number of, well, postulations and hypotheses that there was room for improvement. We were lucky that in a couple of tests in Brazil and in the Philippines in '77, we were able to show the evidence that what we were claiming theoretically at the Kyoto conference could be implemented in practice. FAO asked us to set up the Artemia Reference Center, and right from the start, and I'm pleased that there are some of the participants in these early studies going back to 1978 or in the room here, we set up the International Study on Artemia with a few academic partners, but very complementary in terms of expertise, so that we were able to tackle the all the questions, I must say, that we had at that time on what type of Artemia, what genus or species we are working with, what is the nutritional value, what is that importance of the highly unsaturated fatty acids, etc. So over the years, particularly the 80s and the 90s, a lot of papers were published. We had 2 major big international Artemia conferences, one in Texas, one in Belgium. We had the first manual, we had an FAO manual, we had a number of books. So this was, let's say, the period where a lot of new knowledge was generated in order to see an opportunity already in the 1980s that more sources of Artemia came into the market, and that the vital role that Artemia is playing could be taken up in the hatcheries. Because at that time, and some of you might say that I'm biased, but I'm not when you will hear how many people come to the Larvae Conference, hatcheries, larval food, Artemia are still the key to successful aquaculture. And it's no surprise that with the expansion of aquaculture and the hatchery developments that we have seen, that the consumption of Artemia increased quickly. In summary here on this slide, where are today the most important commercial sources? First place, the Great Salt Lake in Utah. We will hear a number of presentations later today. Then in Central Asia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Siberia, Russia. That's the area where we have, let's say, a second major part of the commercial availability. And then from the coast, from the Far East, the coast in China, the Bohai Bay, all the way inland with a number of lakes. Probably we will hear in some of the next presentations more details about that. So what are the critical needs? Because we also have to think about the future. And last week there was a very interesting workshop at FAO headquarters on sustainable harvesting and what are the different criteria that should be considered in order to sustain that resource, that fisheries resource. So you see the items, the critical needs that will come up in some of the presentations this morning and then for the members this afternoon. There is also a lot of work undertaken in particularly Southeast Asian countries we will hear about. And that leads us to where we are today. Hatchery aquaculture, where Artemia is used, is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And interesting, for me it was a surprise as well to see that FAO realized that this results in a final production of over 10 million tons of high-value aquatic species. So 2021 was the year that FAO, during COVID time, reflected on the future of Artemia. And that was the trigger to set up a new international study on Artemia, but this time we call it the International Artemia Aquaculture Consortium, with, you see, a lot of much more partners than in the ISA study. But the good news is that also upon the request of FAO, we see that there is more cooperation, that there is more interaction also with the private sector, taking a role in looking at the different applications of Artemia. No time to go into the details, only item that I want to stress upon, because it will probably play a role also in some of the discussions during larvae. Looking, as you see in this slide, the way Artemia cysts are being used in the hatcheries, huge differences from one region in the world or even from in the same country, the big hatcheries, the small hatcheries, where they are doing a good job taking care of all the characteristics of Artemia to have the maximum output, whereas in some cases we really see that, excuse me to say it so bluntly, that one is wasting the Artemia, resulting in problems in the hatchery, and then blaming the Artemia because they are not using the proper protocols. So it's really highly needed to see more emphasis on how to use Artemia a better way, look for the good aquaculture practices in dealing with Artemia, using the new FAO Artemia manual published just a few months ago. Also a new item, might have not much time to discuss about, but important new developments supported by FAO to look into the use of Artemia as human food, particularly in areas where you have malnourished children. So that brings me to the International Artemia Aquaculture Consortium. Through FAO, once every 10 years, there is a global conference on aquaculture. That was in Shanghai during COVID times, so it was all online. This is a very formal process because they need to get the support of all the UN member countries. So at the 2022 Committee on Fisheries, for the first time, reference was made to the importance of Artemia in aquaculture. And finally, in, finally in 2023, we got recognized, formally recognized by FAO, and are now hosted by the NACA, the Network of Aquaculture Centers for Asia and Pacific. Thank you very much, and you will hear now more about the International Artemia Aquaculture Consortium from Simon Wilkinson from NACA.